Greetings, everyone. I'm Jed Shlackman. I work as a holistic counselor, a hypnotherapist, and energy healer as well. So, providing a holistic view on a variety of mental and physical health concerns. And for today's video, I'd like to speak about the topic of genetics. People often ask or wonder, do genetics cause various diseases or disorders? And first we have to consider what a disease or disorder actually is. So it's a label that's been applied to describe a certain pattern of symptoms or pattern of functioning within the body or the psyche, the body or the mind or the behaviors, etc. So it's not really the discrete thing per se that people may conceptualize it as. For example, if you have cancer, that's a disease process that's been identified and labeled, but what's actually occurring, there's some change in the cellular metabolism somewhere in your body causing cells to grow in anomalous ways. So you're having some type of cancerous tissue develop, a tumor per se, and that's not happening spontaneously or randomly or in a vacuum. Something is fostering and triggering that process. There is some type of stress occurring, usually on multiple levels, both psychologically and physically, biochemically, that's leading to this appearance of a cancer in the body. But just observing that that cancer is there is not telling you the whole story. It's not telling you systemically everything that's contributed to that manifesting. So if you want to really understand that cancer and figure out a way to reverse that process to help the body come back into a state of health and harmony, you can't just go by that diagnosis. You have to look at the whole systemic process, what's happening physically, environmentally, biochemically, and psychologically with that individual and their environment. And that's how you might better understand what that cancer is for that particular person. So if we think about people who are trying to connect genetics with particular diseases and disorders, doing research and reporting some type of a claim that there's some quantitative association between certain genes and the presence of a disease or disorder, we need to look at that from a broader view, realizing that some degree of correlation is not really telling you causation. It's just letting you know that certain patterns or variations commonly appear at the level of genes when certain disorders or diseases are diagnosed. So you're finding some pattern of correlation. That's not necessarily telling you there's causation from that level. Another way to look at this is different internal and external variables and stresses primarily cause changes in genetic expression. So you'll see certain patterns appear in genetics when people are exposed to different types of stresses. That could be psychological traumas, stressful environments. It could be biochemical exposures, being exposed to different environmental toxins, different medications and drugs, different types of foods. So everything we're exposed to and how we respond to those things and process them can trigger changes in our genetics. We are, as beings in physical life, designed to adapt to try to survive with whatever we're encountering. So genetics, in a sense, is a process of recording memory, of recording information, and transmitting that information forward into future generations so they can use those adaptations to more effectively adapt and thrive or survive with the environments that they may encounter. So it's this kind of evolutionary learning process that living organisms naturally manifest to improve the chances of surviving. So when you see genetic patterns, it's not that there's something wrong, that there's some random mutation interfering with your health. In a way, it's more likely to be the opposite, that you're carrying out some type of program of adaptation that your ancestors developed that helped them adapt or survive in some type of environment that was challenging or harsh or difficult for them. So it helps to kind of reframe the way we're looking at genetics through that lens of epigenetics, where our genes are not there having random mutations or dysfunctions coded in them. They're actually carrying forward information that's meant to help us adapt. So that's a more holistic view of what genetics are actually representing. They're part of this means for biological and psychological survival. So they're giving that organism a pattern to access. It's like a subconscious program, in a sense, that can be immediately carried out without having to pause and think and create something new. It's something that's already there. You could say it's inherent because we inherited it, but that doesn't mean we're always going to carry out that program. Which program gets activated or selected depends on what types of environments or stimuli we encounter, and also how we as an individual, as a particular personality, perceive those stimuli in our environment. All of that plays into what program gets activated. And then if we're seeing that program as a disease or disorder, we're giving that label to it rather than considering that it's how our body or mind is attempting to respond to some particular environment or stresses we're encountering. So from that kind of broader holistic overview, genetics are not causing disease per se. They will likely correlate, we'll likely see certain patterns appear at the DNA level, at the biochemical level, as we encounter different traumas, different stresses, different environments that elicit those responses. So rather than trying to look for genetic codings or patterns and using that to explain why you may manifest a particular disorder or disease, it helps to see what stresses might have triggered that, what's going on in your life and your environment, both our biochemical environment and social environment, that's leading to that particular genetic expression being brought forward. And if we're looking to heal, the solution lies in understanding that broader context, seeing what stresses we've encountered, how we've reacted to those stresses, and if we want to recover our health, we need to either clear away or relieve ourselves of those stresses, so not be putting those overwhelming pressures on ourselves, or to build more resources or more effective and efficient ways at handling those stresses so that we're not reacting in a way that's creating an apparent pathology or dysfunction. So either we reduce or resolve the stresses or we access better, more effective ways to handle those stresses in our life. And that's how we're likely to bring about what we would call healing or recovery from a disease or disorder. So just pointing to a correlation between genetics and a disorder or disease is not really empowering people to heal. It's not telling the whole story of what created a particular pattern, of why some way of adapting or responding that your ancestors may have developed or accessed is also activated now in your life. We want to really look at the whole picture, at a systemic understanding of what's happening if we wish to foster and facilitate healing. We may need to change our environment or our lifestyle. We may need to shift our diet, the things that we're consuming and exposing ourselves to. And we may also need to shift our mental processes, how we've interpreted different experiences or events in our life, so that we can process those in a way that's more empowering, more self-affirming, that allows us to hold on to our own sense of self, our self-worth, our self-love, our self-compassion. If we're feeling anger, shame, guilt, fear, all of those types of emotions can constrict our body in some way. They can alter how energy is flowing through our body and supporting physiological processes. So working on all these different levels brings the potential to have more success, in a sense, with facilitating healing. I hope that this broader explanation of the role of genes or genetics in our health and how it relates to any perceived disorder or disease gives you some insider ideas about how to approach healing, how to look beyond just a label or just a correlation, to see the deeper processes that are unfolding, so you can find ways of intervening that will support your healing or your recovery. For those who are interested in exploring more about holistic health, I invite you to visit my website, phinsights.com. That's spelled PHINSIGHTS.com. And for now, I wish everyone a pleasant day. Namaste.